All right. Hi, guys. Welcome to another edition of Tshimong Talks. Man, I'm really glad we're doing this. I'm really glad this is an episode I'm speaking like it's a podcast situation. I'm used to saying this episode. This edition of Tshimong Talks is one I've been looking forward to for a very long time because it discusses, something that's very dear to me, something that I personally, hold as a vocation. We're discussing entrepreneurship in Africa. So I'm really, really glad that all of you guys have joined in and are trickling in slowly as well. For the people that are on the call already, just note that this event is also live on Facebook. So you can actually go on the UJ Libraries page on Facebook, and then there are people already watching there and live streaming. So we are streaming from Zoom and from Facebook at the very same time. So yeah, we're really getting into the action of it right now. Okay, so just to kick off the talk properly and to introduce our guest on this very platform that we're talking about. Entrepreneurship is an important mechanism that can be used to accelerate economic and social development in society, particularly in African contexts where people live below the poverty line and generally do not have access to economic opportunities to improve their livelihoods. Ironically, it is in these same contexts where young people only strive to obtain a qualification that will secure them employment, as opposed to actively seeking out opportunities to create value for society. Join us to discuss this topic, change the world and become an entrepreneur. And our guest today for this specific topic is a very, very good friend of mine, Nolo Mokoena, who is the co-founder of Dentx and a non-executive director at GreenDesign. Nolo, my brother, how are you doing? Are you within? Are you on?
I am here, Tommy. How are you doing?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. Look, I was so scared. Like, I was having such weird technical difficulties, dude. Like, it's so crazy. Like, right before, like, Nolo and I had a conversation before the conversation. So we had a good conversation. Yeah, and now, right before, we're trying to test this thing, I'm having my own difficulties and stuff like that. But I'm actually really, really happy that we're able to do this, man. So, Nolo, just to get right into it, brother.
Yeah.
For the people who are watching today, man, tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. So how did you start out and what do you do right now? Unpack it. We need the story, the narrative. Kids need the role models.
Firstly, I want to start off by saying thank you very much to you and the leadership at both UJ and Tshimong for having me a part of this. And so I really don't take this for granted. And so thank you very much for having me on this platform. And then hi to everyone else who's joining. We hope that this conversation is going to be real and honest and will really help you guys in some practical ways. So,
yeah.
I mean, I usually say, for me, my journey started when I pretty much figured out I could be a decent entrepreneur.
Yeah.
When I was buying and selling homework in primary school. I'm not encouraging any of you guys to do that, but I pretty much
commodity.
Boy, look. So I pretty much figured out in primary school that there was obviously a commodity in high demand. The market dynamics were right, and I could produce a product that's just in time. Yeah. And so that's pretty much where it started. It sounds ridiculous, but that's actually where I think I started to understand how market dynamics truly work. I think one of the biggest assumptions we oftentimes make and we teach young people is that all entrepreneurship is based in a need. What we fail to add is that the needs have a hierarchy. And so, yes, people have tons of needs, but you should always go to the need that's most immediate to them. And so I pretty much learned that lesson quite early on. I realized I could sell sweets, but there's a lot of people selling sweets, selling the apple man, jiggy, so you know what I'm saying? There were a lot of guys in the game, but I realized that the highest need for every student walking in was pretty much being empowered to pass. because the teachers wanted that, the parents wanted that, and no one wanted to fail. So I cracked into that little market, which was kind of, like it was a little lucrative. I mean, in the early 2000s, I was probably making about 100 Rand a week.
That's a million Rand in today's terms.
No, I mean, like even as a kid,
that's a million Rand for a kid.
There was a time actually my mom was convinced I was stealing. She was like, and I was like, Mom, I'm hustling. So my journey started there. I went on to high school. Obviously, I studied at the joint first best university in Africa. Obviously, UJ is joint first with Tux. But so I studied at Tux, studied agricultural economics. And it was also during that time where my passion for entrepreneurship kind of grew. We started our first app, then major fail. But it was that time where I started learning the game and started realizing how it actually works. And then, like from there, I joined P&G, Procter & Gamble. Was really privileged to be one of 3 who were hired throughout the continent that year, which is really great exposure, great training. Left that and went into mining entrepreneurship, which went really well, and now investing in small businesses. So that's pretty much been my journey today.
It's brilliant. And it's, what's wonderful about it is that like anyone can really trace these things back to their childhood. Like if you really,
absolutely,
like that's how you know that you may be in an area of calling. If you're doing something that's reminiscent to what you were doing as a kid, like when you were a child in primary school, you know what I'm saying? Already creating value at that level. I think that's just the wonderful thing about what you're saying right now.
Absolutely. And I think like, I'm so sorry because what you said is so important. I think when you're young, you're told there's a million things you could do, and it's true. What do you want to be? A doctor, and sort of. And as you grow older to that sort of matric age into your early 20s, you need to move from the endless possibilities of childhood to the actuality of adulthood. And so when that shift comes, a lot of people make the mistake of making that shift based off society as opposed to their natural propensities. There's a reason why parents, baholo, bomama, inging, they'll say to a 4-year-old, ora mwana ke moruti, or ora mwana ke. What they're actually saying is not a vocation. They're saying you have a unique combination of skills and natural tendencies that lead you towards a certain way. And do the things that energize you. Look, I knew from a young age that logistics, the whole organizing, they bore me. Understand what I'm saying? So it's just not my strength. So I pretty much early on knew I needed to partner with people who were logistically strong. Obviously, everyone has to go to a certain level of administrative efficiency, but I sort of knew early on that's just not my thing. And the hardest thing is we spend the first 18 years trying to become a thing, which is what the standardization of education is. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a great foundation, but you have to use it to move into your actuality. And so you move from the endless possibilities of childhood to the actuality of adulthood. And you find those crevices, you find that gap, you find the thing that people don't want to do. And ultimately, if it speaks to your soul and there's congruency there, I think you can unlock a lot of value. So that's just a little, I felt like what you said was so important. I didn't want us to rush through it because sometimes the most important things aren't the sexiest, the most important things aren't the sexiest. And so we live in a culture that's very sexy. Everything's cool, everything's swag, everything's drip, everything's vibey.
Everything sometimes the hashtag
100%, which again in itself is not a bad thing, but you have to have an acute awareness of what really matters in life, and because that's what moves you forward, not just now. You don't want to be successful now. You want to be successful for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years and generationally. And so you really have to have a long-term perspective.
So talk to me about I just want to pick up from what you said about the education system. And this is really the conversation that we always have in our classes, Tshimong, is that the problem with education systems, I guess, is that we are tracked, right? So
yes,
put on a specific pathway. So what I usually say to the kids I teach is that, like, between grade 1 and matric, every morning you are waking up, going to a school with a set schedule, and your day is determined for you. You're putting Vaseline every morning.
100%.
You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Going to school, and there's a very specific thing that you ought to be doing, right?
Right.
And
right.
The problem with that is that, like, entrepreneurship is hardly the thing that you are being prepared for, right? So how does one then, in the first instance, tap into a mindset that can even allow them to even consider entrepreneurship, right? You've been in school all these years. You did English and you did well in English. You told you need to be a lawyer. You did well in maths and science. You told you need to be an engineer or a doctor. But you were never told, because of, I guess, your creativity or whatever, that you could use this as innovation and create value and be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
So how do we tap into that kind of mindset as kids coming out of school?
That is such a good question. And I guess the key for me there lies on two things. The first thing is you need to realize you're far more prepared for entrepreneurship than you think. And this is important because it'll give you the confidence to make that cognitive or that mindset leap into asking questions about an entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurship sometimes has been treated as, pinky pinky, like, growing up, but hey, pinky pinky, you know what I'm saying? Everyone say, yeah, I know pinky. So now when you're young, you just believe it, like pinky pinky, virus make up. You just like, these things are real, bro. I've never seen one about it, these things are real. And then, and then you get a little bit older and you start to ask yourself, it starts off with curiosity first, like, what does pinky pinky look like? Like, what is this thing? And then you sort of come to a point where you make your own decision about a lot of these things. And I feel like entrepreneurship is a lot like that. We've treated it as a pinky pinky, right? It's kind of like, this thing's there, but we're not kind of sure. How do I tap into it? I like to tell young people, you're far more prepared than you think. Absolutely. Now, why do I say these? Two things: you live in a very real world, and number two, the benefit of youth makes your mind flexible to what the world needs. The longer you live in the professional streams of system, the more that becomes your truth as opposed to what actually happens on the ground. Sure. And so it's a massive advantage to be living in a place where you accept the world for what it is. You accept issues for what they are, and you accept the possible solutions for what they are. So the first step is to realize you're actually more prepared than you think. The second step you need to make is to realize you can't think of entrepreneurship in the same way as you think of a profession. So when you think of a doctor, you think of there's going to be training and I'm going into a set function, a set fraternity, a set institution called medicine, which is millennia old. Well, entrepreneurship is older than all those practices. And so, but what makes entrepreneurship different is entrepreneurship is not a profession you're stepping into. Entrepreneurship is a lens on a certain part of society. And so your profession, the question of the profession then becomes irrelevant. So then it doesn't really matter if you study medicine or not, or if you study English or not, or if you study BCom or not, or you do anything else, because then those things become tools that aid your perspective on society, because ultimately entrepreneurship is not a profession. Now, I believe once you do that, you really take the weight off young people's minds, because we're trained to do well in school, to go to varsity so we can get good jobs. Yes. So naturally in our thinking, that's the progression. So someone goes, I want to be an entrepreneur. And you're thinking, well, what could I do entrepreneurially that could give me the same as a good job? Well, I think you're thinking about things that are 100 steps too far. The key question would have to be, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur, which means I want to create something that adds value. What am I passionate about? And you look at those passions, what am I good at? And then between the two, you use whatever skills you can acquire. If it's a degree, go get the degree. If you can study at UJ, go get in that space, but get in with a clear lens that I know what I'm going to. If it means you go and start your own thing from the start, that's fine as well. Absolutely. But have that space to understand, okay, here's an issue. that I'm really passionate about. I've got natural skills and competencies, and this is stuff I can use to help equip me to be able to function in that way in society. But it's not creating a job. And what that does is it opens up the whole playing field, because actually we need entrepreneurs in medicine. We need guys who are going to come up with new models of hospitals. Healthcare in Africa is a huge challenge. We need entrepreneurs in water. So we need guys who can either study water engineer or geography or just the natural sciences, or sometimes not even study, but be able to get those guys together. Water shortage in Africa is a big thing, yet we do have water. We need guys who understand agriculture. And agriculture is not just about feeding people, it's about preserving the value chain, job creation. So we need people who say, man, these are the big issues. You know, I remember one big issue I had growing up is because no guys, because growing up there was a time in Mafeking when the only Afrocombs available were those like steel ones. And bro, 9 in the morning, and those are sore, bruh. Those are sore.
But I'm not holding as a child,
bruh. It's sore, bruh. They got things put in the whole thing. But then I visited my cousin in the West Rand. They go, biggest dad. I can tell another. My cousin's got the plastic Afrocomb. Like, I mean, I'm combing twice a day, boy. I'm like getting it twice a day. And so when I get home, I press mums. I say, mums, I know this is a gap because I'm not the only one. No, I didn't press my mom. I'm lying. I pressed my brother. I said, boy, because he's 10 years older than me. I said, boy, there's a gap here because I'm not the only one at school complaining about this thing.
For sure.
We all complain about this thing. I'm not saying we're going to be billionaires, but there's a gap. And why am I sharing this story? Even though we never bought, we ended up not buying and selling them. I'm sharing this. I'm sharing this because I was going, at the time, the thing I cared about was not about having neat hair.
Yeah.
I cared about drip.
Yeah.
So for me, it was about swag. But my path to the swag was getting a comfortable comb.
Wow, okay.
And so that's where value actually sits in the entrepreneurial journey. If you look at it in the end goal, sometimes I think you miss the value creation. So these are some of the things that young people can use to kind of understand how to navigate. Because all of a sudden, you're not trying to solve this massive world issue today. You're trying to start. And you can start. And as you go, you'll create the value in your natural pathway towards solving that thing, which people actually care about. We didn't care about looking neat, but we cared about swag, 100%.
Yes,
and swag just included having your hair combed. Understand what I'm saying? And so when you look at it that way, it sort of makes sense.
That's such an amazing point, dude. I was actually having a conversation with Busi, I think a couple of weeks back. And, you know, just talking about our own entrepreneurial journey. And, you know, you're right. Entrepreneurship is actually very incremental, and you actually build the path as you walk.
Absolutely.
The only time you really, you know, get to understand how far you've come is to turn around, right? Because that's the empirical evidence of what you actually did. And what you actually built. Because what's in front of you is next to nothing at all. Like you're actually building what's in front of you constantly. Absolutely. You know, and I guess that's why that you know, saying of entrepreneurship is like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute and you build it on your way down. That's so true. Right? Because you're creating the value as it's happening. And I want you to comment on something there, Nolo, just to dig a bit deeper on like some of the personal questions we need to be asking ourselves.
Wow.
You know, before I get into the, you know, the more market related stuff.
Yes.
But I still want to dig into the things that we need to be asking ourselves. So what I often say is that entrepreneurship or entrepreneurs and artists, you know, have one very, very important thing in common. they get to self-determine their value and purpose every day. They're confronted with the question of what they're doing every day.
100%.
You know what I mean? As opposed to someone in the career path. So just from your perspective, like how do you confront that? How does that question sit with you entrepreneurially? Because it's a very lonely question. It's also a very lonely path, because like not many people around you are thinking about value creation in the way that you're thinking about it.
I think it's such a big and personal and powerful question. And I'm slowing down here because I'm really trying to separate the ego and answer as honestly as possible, because 100%. I think this is one of the probably more pertinent questions you have. One I'd say is you truly have to sit in the uncomfortability of asking yourself why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And can you add value? Honestly, because Tammy, there'll be a lot of opportunities to give up.
Absolutely.
And so, but with anything in life, and I think I tell people this the entire time, those who say entrepreneurship is hard, I'm going to get into a job. Even in a job, there'll be a lot of opportunities for you to give up.
Yeah.
So whatever path you choose in life, it's going to be opportunities. I think what you're saying is so important, because once you know for yourself why you do something and the value you can bring to it,
yes,
the level of resilience that's built in allows you to go the full yards. Entrepreneurship is one of those things where you don't get rewarded for going 80% of the way. You don't get rewarded for going 90% of the way. Mm-hmm. You gotta go all the way and complete the creation you're trying to create.
Yes.
And it's a dangerous road, right? Mm-hmm. In that sense, because you are carving out a lot of ways and things. But what I like to tell young people is you also won't die.
Yeah.
And so
that's it, right?
It's so important. It's so important, because I think a lot of the analogies that make complete sense, but maybe have a second meaning, like jumping from an airplane and you're building the parachute in it. Like, I know exactly what you mean, and I use that analogy all the time. But I was doing a talk at another university just this year, and the one guy came and said, "So you're telling me if I don't build it in time, I'm going to die?" I thought to myself, this kid is smart, because that's such a great way to look at it. And I told him,
to the logical conclusion. Yeah,
right. But I said, you're not going to die. Tom, you're not going to die. But that waking up every day and saying, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Mm-hmm. And the last thing, who am I doing it for? Mm. And that third question is oftentimes the one that's either left out or people don't consider, and they give up along the way. I think if you wake up every day and you say, I'm doing this, this is what I'm trying to do, this is what I'm trying to build, and this is how I'm going to do it. This is the why I'm doing it, because I care about X, Y, and Z. And this is who I'm doing it for. I think that narrows your focus tremendously. I think one of the traps of entrepreneurship for all of us is we're trying to solve global issues. And so you want to start with the whole world immediately. No, start by saying, okay, this is who I'm going to do it for first. Yeah. I'm going to do it for Tshimong, and this is our community, and we're going to grow together and do that. And then next thing, there's a Tshimong in Nigeria. You know what I mean? So, but things happen quite greatly and organically, as you said. So I don't know if I answered that adequately, because it's a combination of thoughts that I'm trying to piece together in a way that can be meaningful, where I'm also not trying to make, guys, I'm not trying to give you this is 5 steps to whatever, because this question is critical, because only you can personally define it. Only you can sit and ask yourself those questions. Mm-hmm. And confront that fear, or confront your ideas, confront your reality. I'm also quite sensitive to where we all come from. It's different spaces. So some people might be called to entrepreneurship, but say your family says they'll only support you going to school. Then my advice is, and to be honest, me, Tammy, we all actually have that journey. So then we start in university, but while you're there, you're plugging into Tshimong and other entrepreneurial programs, making sure you're harnessing and sharpening your entrepreneurial skills. So you need to ask that question for yourself. But remember, again, you know a lot more than you think. So don't let it discourage you or make you fearful. You have the tools to interrogate those things, but interrogate it honestly. Get the conviction for yourself, because a lot of people will say no. A lot of doors won't open immediately. You likely won't make $1 billion in the first year. You might, but there's strong odds you won't. And that's also fine. And your first venture might not be the most successful, or it might, and that's also fine. So unless you know why you're doing something, you're going to focus on all these quote unquote false ideas of success and false symbols of success, which will ultimately derail you along the way.
Talk to me about, just on that tip, right? Because we are slowly coming out of the personal, the existential, slowly though.
Yes.
I don't want to rush it. Talk to me about this notion of failure. In entrepreneurship, failure means something different to what it means.
100%. I remember, it's such a big question. I don't know if you're done there, because I feel like I interrupted you a little bit, but
it's fine.
So I think it's so important, because I remember, guys, and my mom only got the backstory to this recently at Christmas. She couldn't believe it. I got 10% for arts and culture one time, right? I mean, on the report, bro. Bro, I was so scared.
Yeah.
When you open the report and you just bonchu, man. Bonchu, and it's arts and culture. So my math is in, high 80s, 90s, science, all that, but arts and culture I got 10. But the reason I got 10 is because there were 2 exercises for that whole term. And I think in grade 9, if you guys remember, I think term 3, there wasn't really a test. It was kind of just like assignments, right? So the first one,
I remember that,
the first one we had to design a mask, and the girls at the glitter doll, guys would come with the glitter and all that. I just cut it. I just felt inspired to do like a minimalist kind of vibe. So, and being the entrepreneur I am, right? Being the entrepreneur I am, I was like, nah, dog, I'm gonna go minimalist, and I use the same colors that Rothko uses. So it's like an ambient orange and an ambient blue, right? So I split the mask in half, and I did it, and I was like, this is inspired by Rothko, one of the great American expressionists of the 50s and 60s. And I submitted this thing, and the teacher said 0. 1 out of 10, Z. I said, man, 1 out of 10. She said 1 out of 10. I said, I'm blown. If you give me 1 out of 10, I'm blown. She says 1 out of 10. First light, blown. What? Okay, no problem. Second assignment, we had to do a waltz. Right? We had to do a dance.
Yes, you are. Yes. I would have failed that one, tell you now.
But the waltz is going well. What happened was, when I spun her around, I went into a little groovy. I did a little freestyle. Exactly. Right? So I went to a little groovy. The marks come. She got like 9 out of 10. Me, I'm blown. 1 out of 10. I said, man, so now my final marks is 2 out of 20 for the term. So I'm blown. At that point, I'm blown. There's nothing I can do about it, right? So now I'm blown. And I'm like, okay, cool, man. So here it is. I've got, change the marks. She did. It comes. That was, you still here, bro?
I'm still here.
So there we go. That was the time that I learned the difference of failure by standard versus failure by not trying. And
unpack that right now, please.
When I went to the teacher and I asked him, man, why did you Zeeb 2 out of 20? Why did you? She said,
Tiger.
She said the reason is not because of the output. I know what you can do when you didn't try. And entrepreneurship is the difference between failure by standard and failure by trying. Once you get to a professional place, there are typically two expressions of success. One is prestige, meaning you do something in your field of profession that other people respect. The other one is financial.
Yeah.
Right? Meaning I'm making bones. Understand?
Yeah.
The amount of money I'm making, they'll view it through the lens of failure by standard. By the standard of prestige, you didn't cut it. By the failure of money, by the standard of money, you didn't do it. Those standards are important, but they're not everything.
Yeah.
Because I like to talk about entrepreneurship. Your focus should be the failure of not trying. If you have an idea, you have a concept, you have a solution, you have a moral obligation to try it.
Absolutely.
Because whatever you do between not trying and doing it is failure.
Yeah. Wow.
And once you understand that, only once you get that can you move to the deeper question of saying the difference between entrepreneurs and everyone else is that failure for us is seen as something that's happened externally. We don't internalize it. So you're not a failure. So, we tried this thing that no one's ever tried before and it happened to fail. And that's fine.
Yeah. Almost like a scar, like a battle scar sometimes.
100%. 100%.
I've got 3 ventures that have busted. Let's go. But look at that now. Yeah.
100%, right? And it's like soccer, bro. It's like playing sport. Like when you're on the soccer pitch and you trap the ball and you have a bit of space and you know in your heart, I'm a little bit far. But I bet. And you don't know if it's going to go in. You hope and you do everything right. You make sure your weight is over the ball. You hit it as hard as you can. You try and time it. You try and aim, but you don't know. Life and entrepreneurship is a lot like that. But to bring this now, because we've discussed the first part, which is failure by not, like this failure by not trying, and then versus failure by standing. That's the first one. The second one is at the personal level. I'm not a failure. Something I did has failed. You need to now move to the third one, which is important, which is ultimately as an entrepreneur, it's not about what you do, it's about who you become. And this was actually great because I heard one of your podcasts about 3 weeks ago where you worded this so aptly. You said, which I mean was absolutely brilliant, I thought. You said, when I look back at some of the stuff, I'm not shocked at what I did. I look back and I go, I can't believe that was who I was. And when you said that, I thought to myself, wow, this is absolutely great, because that's probably one of the few times people have verbalized for me and crystallized the tension of the failure is when you realize what really makes you who you are versus what you do. I think failure becomes a help. It just becomes another classroom. We all know the first time we all learned logs, log, tan, cars, everyone failed. Let's not, the homework, you're getting 1 out of 10. It's part of the game. It's a part of the growth. And so for me, I think if you keep those things central in your early years, I think you really multiply your growth and learning.
Sure. Man, that's an amazing answer. And just for the audience involved, like, I think I want you to understand that if you are immersed in the game of entrepreneurship, genuinely, these are conversations that you are often having with yourself and you are having with other entrepreneurs as well, because you're consistently confronted with these questions.
Absolutely.
And I think what makes it really, really difficult is that, and what makes the task arduous in your mind, at least, right, when you're confronted with these questions, is that you have to constantly fight against existing popular notions, constantly. So there's a very like standardized notion of failure that was ingrained in you ever since you started school. A very strong notion of value or success, actually, right? That was ingrained in you ever since you started school, in your family environment, church, wherever. Like you have there are very stock notions of everything. But I think the journey of an entrepreneur, or the existence of an entrepreneur, is knowing first and foremost that you're killing norms.
Yes.
Right? And so doing the work of killing norms is also like the psychologically burdensome part of it as well. That comes with breaking down the walls that had already been created inside of your own mind. So it's really great that we're having this conversation at this level, right? So now we're coming out of the personal and we're entering a little bit into the market now, right? So, you've kind of answered a couple of very important questions for yourself as to why you want to do entrepreneurship. We had a, talk about purpose and all those kinds of things. And then we look at the market, right? Nolo, you mentioned something very, very, very important. And I want that to be our point of departure. You spoke about the fact that, as entrepreneurs, actually, we are more prepared than we think we are, because we exist in a real world with real problems. And so let's just talk about the entrepreneurial landscape in South Africa and maybe the continent at large, because, what I often say, and some commentators really, agree as well, is that like African entrepreneurs tend to be focused on quote unquote real problems that affect real people. So maybe let's just take that from there. Maybe from your perspective, from your vantage point, especially as someone that is already investing in startups yourself.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the South African and potentially the African opportunity, the landscape itself. What about our continent is a unique place for entrepreneurship?
Yeah, wow. I think it's such a big question, and I mean, I'll try and answer in about 3 minutes. I think there are probably some macro realities you need to consider, and really these are continental, and I'll try to bring it down to more of a regional view. So that's the first thing you need to understand, is the macroeconomic dynamic. Secondly, you need to bring it home and really look at the micro, and I'll tell you the framework that I use broadly when I look at African movements. And then thirdly, we need to talk about the rands and cents, which is really important as well. So firstly, at a macroeconomic viewpoint or perspective, Africa is one of the most exciting places to be an entrepreneur. I think our development curve sits at an inflection point where I think value is going to be multiplied over the next 2 to 3 decades or so. Our population is growing at quite a rapid rate, which brings challenges but massive opportunities in terms of what we do. And then there's a massive drive continentally from a governance point of view to ensure that the infrastructure needed to make sure this new Africa functions actually exists. And that in itself provides significant opportunities. And so Africa is very exciting for me, those 3 primary reasons. I mean, you can get into it and go deep and go, well, if we multiply our population twice over in the next 30 years, what does it mean even for Mpahla? Yeah, right. Are we still going to be wearing clothes made in China? And so you can talk about that. You can talk about food. You can talk about housing. You can talk about transportation. What does it mean when the insurable base multiplies like that for insurance guys? What does it mean, right? I think so whatever lane what does it mean for healthcare when so many babies are being born every single year, spread across so many geographies? And so you can have that conversation. What does it mean for education, right? Can governments build enough schools that are not just built, but optimally functioning? What does it mean for the private sector opportunity in education? Is Tshimong going to be a school 5 years from now in Africa, right? So all of a sudden, you then have all these opportunities because of the rapid population growth, the need for infrastructure to house them, and the growth of Africa, even economically, right? So So at a macro level, this is a very exciting time. You could almost close your eyes, take a pin, spin a world map, and land it anywhere in Africa. If you go with a decent product, with a great system and a great model, you're likely to succeed, because the environment is going to shift us that way, where even if it's not that great, you'll be fine. So that's at a macro. So when I come to a micro, talk about South Africa, for example, or Southern Africa, for us to really understand where we are, we need to look at our nations quite soberly. I think one of the biggest tensions that come with economic progress is we oftentimes are in a rush to forget where we come from. Now, that's a logical response to struggle, right? It's like, if you've ever lived in res, you know you're not going back. I ain't going back, and I don't want to go back. In fact, I don't want to think about it. Right?
I'm cool. I'm fine.
I'm all right, dog. I'm okay. Yeah. I've done my years. So
shout out to all the people in res right now.
Shout out. No, like, res is amazing. Res is amazing. Res is amazing for y'all. You know what I mean? So, but no one can tell me now. If I was to commission 1,000-bed residence in Braamfontein, no one can tell me now what a res needs more than the students.
Thank you.
And so ultimately, at a micro level, what I'm seeing is the opportunity is a lot more people tying their entrepreneurial endeavors to who they are. I think this is something that is undertapped and undervalued in the market. It's quite significant. We're talking with a massive insurer about some of the challenges that I feel are there. I remember growing up, there was a time when my mom only had one car, so she needed it for work. So during school holidays, they'd put us on a taxi, and you take a taxi to like a relative or your grandma or whatever. And it's like a 3-hour drive, like, 300K, 400K, some people go further. And I was thinking about my experience there, and I oftentimes wondered, if we had an accident and I died on that trip, what does that mean? And I sort of been asking like myself the question from the age of 8 or so, and now 20 years later, getting to sit and talking with some smart insurance guys around, look, how do we get travel insurance for long haul taxi rides, right? How do we make sure that when it's Easter, and I mean over Easter, at least 20,000 South African dies on the road, right? So how do we make sure that those families are taken care of? How do we get a base level of travel insurance for long haul?
Excellent.
And so it's just it's a big question that we don't know if we'll solve overnight. It might take years, but I'm committed to it. And so, but ultimately it's those things where you realize you don't have to go outside of yourself to find solutions. The solutions for us are not in Silicon Valley. They are inside all of us. Yeah. And because we've lived that life, I still think that, for example, apart from Oros, all the other concentrated are too sweet. King Elekana, Long Island, King. It's in Long Island.
Yeah, not long. Is it? It's not Long Island, for sure.
But you know what I'm talking about? King, something island.
Yeah, something island. Gabon, yeah.
It's the concentrate. There's one at ginger. I told you, there's one at ginger.
Yeah.
I always looked at that in varsity, dog. We'd be buying that, because in first year the bones went right. Second year I pumped up to the Oros. But Wild Island, thank you, Nkateko, saving
Wild
us.
Island.
It's Wild Island, dog. So example, I've always felt like Wild Island is it's just a touch too sweet. Because I've tried variations of mixing it. You see, it's when the concentrate is low, you sort of mix it, and then there's no flavor, right? Or there's flavor, there's no sugar. Then you pour too much, it's too sweet. So I remember saying to the oats, I think we can take these guys. No, we can grip these oats. No, let's grip these guys, bro. You know what I mean? So but those things come from our own experience.
Yeah, because you're a consumer. You are essentially the consumer, the person that's
you
facing.
are You know what you need. And the beauty is there are at least 1 million people like you, if not more. And so for me, that's the opportunity we have. I think being in the startup space, I see too many guys trying to create Facebooks when we don't have the same macro reality that birthed Facebook. Facebook worked because, and Google worked because Google came at the right curve of the internet boom. Yes. Facebook came when connectivity was there. Here in Africa, we're still talking 4R, and telecom doesn't even work across the whole country. And so we need to be looking at other ways to create value so that we can invest in the infrastructure to get us to that place to do those things. So that's what we're talking about at a micro level.
Yes.
Some nice opportunities there. And then for me at an entrepreneurial level, what I'm not seeing enough of, I'm not seeing enough of unsexy businesses.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I'm not seeing enough young people commit to unsexy businesses. Some of the most successful people I know in my life, I'm talking about not millionaires, I'm talking about billionaires in rand terms. Some of the most successful people I know in the most unsexiest businesses. Print press, book press, for example, there are only 3. And again, if anyone's very passionate about democracy and access, I think the last we checked in our study, there's only 4 print presses for Braille in the country. The number of blind people in Southern Africa is quite astronomical, and those kids have to be educated as well. And there's only 4 presses. Yeah, it's only 4. So we're actually launching the 5th one, but it still won't be enough, you know. And so we understand there's just so much opportunity there. So what I'm not seeing, but it's not a sexy business, right? I'm not gonna, you know, it's not on the gram. That's what I'm saying. It's not on the gram. It's you know what I'm saying? Like I'm out here, you know, doing Braille. Now I'm learning Braille as well, you know. So I think that's key, right? And I think there's so many, for example, carpentry, woodwork. The country's actually signing a bill from the infrastructure side where timber is going to be part of our building materials for the next 20, 30 years as a drive to push sustainability. So carpentry is going to become integral again in this nation, which hopefully will create millions of jobs through absorption. But again, entrepreneurially, what do? I make roof trusses. People are going to be like, come on, dog, you know, like it's not, you know, I'm not in a suit every day. You know what I'm saying? But I know, but
is it on the App Store?
You know what I'm saying? What is that, bro? What's a trust? So like there's that game. I think I've set this example a lot. I mean, just before lockdown, there was a massive shortage in the country of black laces, black shoelaces. Yeah, those are from China only. Massive opportunity around that. The amount of school shoes being sold every year alone creates a strong enough base. So what I'm not seeing is I'm not seeing enough guys going into unsexy businesses, which are the ones that truly create jobs. And then secondly, you can print a lot of bones. And so like I think there's a lot. I mean, look, I'm looking at you wearing glasses. We did a study 4 years ago into glass frame manufacturers. And where the full value chain, where does it sit? Where are the true South African frames that use true South African raw materials? Let's use timber from here. How do we integrate it with a red rock from Venda? You know, the red sand, how do we incorporate it to give it a nice blend in the color? So no one's thinking on that level. And obviously, you know, my team and I are well aware, and that's also why we acquired the engineering company. We knew we needed engineering capability, but we also realized over the next 50 years, there's only so much we can do. And my heart's prayer is that, you know, all the entrepreneurs in Africa will kind of begin to see that the guys who own the economy are not the sexiest. It's not always the banks. It's not always the startups. It's the Stel who makes Savannah. They own the cider market, right? And who drinks that? It's us. So, you know, I always say when you look at the grants, we disperse about 4.5 billion rand in grants a month. And the majority of those grants, they go to retail stores, whatever. And they buy everyday goods. And so for me, it's like there's a base there that should be empowering us, in particular young South Africans, helping to create jobs to absorb and making sure our entrepreneurs are uber successful and understand that this nation can still be good to them. So,
yeah. Wow. I mean, like, Nolo, I mean, there's a big question I want to ask you, but it's fine. I need to grab questions from the audience. Yeah. A couple of questions that came in through the Q&A. Shout out Elijah, I see you, man.
Hey, what up, Elijah? Yeah, it's good to see you.
So the first question there from Elijah is, what were the top 3 metrics / criteria that moved you to pull the trigger on startups you've invested in? And what top 3 dissuaded you from investing? Those are those big Shark Tank questions.
Very good. Very good. I think first, Elijah's like a young, old guy. Elijah's a young guy, but he's been around the entrepreneurial space for a long time. Yeah. And so shout out Elijah, man. It's good to see you. From the 6 investments I've made, I think I really focus on 3 things. Number 1, can this be sold outside of South Africa? For a lot of people, it's not a question. For me, it is. I think that South Africa, even population-wise, but also need-wise, it's a great starting point. It's not it. So I always ask myself, can this solution be sold across? So if you look at Dentx, for example, our AI machine for auto repairs, we're launching in Europe, we're launching in Asia, we're launching in America. So that's a global solution from South Africa. So amazing. I look at that. The second thing I look at, which I see Llewellyn asked, which you need to get Llewellyn on the show, by the way. Shout out, Louis. So the second thing I always ask is really for me, I look at the entrepreneur, the founding team. That's really important for me. You need to have a team that's really obsessed about what they're doing, can ask themselves critical questions, and is very self-aware as well. And then the third, I look at the financial viability of this thing. Because I'm P&G trained. At P&G, there's a concept they train us in the first week, which is called coinage. And the idea of coinage is the acceptable monetary value that society finds not offensive. For example, the coinage in South Africa is 1 cent. So, which is why a lot of our things will be priced $99.99, because South Africans will feel like $99.99 is cheaper than 100 rand, but it's 1 cent. So our coinage here is 1 cent. If you go to the UK, their coinage is 5 cents. So everything happens 995. Right. So that number, it's just a psychological thing that you sort of have.
So, behavioral economics, right?
100%. So for me, I always look at the product. So first I look at the product itself. Is it scalable globally? I look at the team, and then thirdly, I look at the financial model, which is it priced right? So I'm never looking at the returns. I'm not the guy who goes, oh, this thing can make $1 billion. I'm asking myself, is it priced right for the market? And is it going to be priced right for the next market we go into? For example, if we sell clothes, we can't sell the same pairs of jeans in South Africa for 2,000 Rand and go to Nigeria and say it's 20,000 Rand, because the guy in Nigeria is just going to buy it online in South Africa anyway and get it there. So you can't do that. So you have to have some form of price uniformity across the different markets. And so unless the price is right in your primary market, it's quite difficult to scale. So Elijah, those are the 3 things I look at. What dissuades me the most, 1 is all vision, no plans. The second thing is not enough work done on the financial model. The third thing is I never invest in one-man shows. So I will subtly usually ask like a team, hey, let's get a team. Most people are quite open to actually receiving help, but if there's no team, that I know this thing can only grow up to a certain point or will only move at a certain speed, which is not wise when you when I'm investing rands and cents. So I hope that answers the question.
Let's jump quickly to Llewellyn's question.
Yes.
Question I have is what kind of policies do government should implement to support entrepreneurs?
Cool. Louis, it's a great question. I think for me, the first one would be entrepreneurship tools. So if I was the government, the first policy I'd have is for EMEs, which are exempt micro enterprises. So if you turn over less than 10 million rand a year, I would have actually invested in a suite of government-owned tools, including accounting software, sales platforms, social media generating software that I'd give out for free to those entrepreneurs. Because those are tools that when you're that size, you can't afford an accountant, you can't afford a lawyer, but they're so fundamental. But they are so fundamental into how you run things, how you invoice, do you invoice on time, your cash flow management, all that is important. So Louis, the first policy I'd have is I would commission a entrepreneurial support unit. And that unit's job is to design tech solutions only that will help support entrepreneurs. The second thing I would do is I would ring fence a certain number of government business opportunities to exclusively EMEs. I think they do that on paper, not in reality, but I'd sort of do that.
Very good. That's a
I would, yeah. I would sort of do that. The last thing I'd do is I would earmark certain intergovernmental agreements, certain trade agreements with certain nations, and use those as opportunities to make sure we absorb entrepreneurs into those streams. So I think those are the three things that I'm looking at. But on the first one, I can't explain to you how many talented entrepreneurs I know who don't even have a cash flow management system. And so for me, it'd be really getting those things done, making sure that these things are free and accessible and that entrepreneurs can be empowered.
Hello, Nolo.
Yeah, I'm here, boy. Did you hear me, boy?
Oh, great. Okay. Sorry about that. My internet just went fuzzy a bit there. So sorry, man, I'm interrupting you in the middle of the answer. Can I just ask the people? Let me just ask the people from who are assisting us with the hosting here, Sistio and Balisa, please. What's this? Please just look out for Dentx Tenjegwayo because he's going to be doing our vote of thanks. So just look out for Dentx Tenjegwayo and just get him set up for that. And then Nolo, perhaps I'm going to get one more question from the audience there. Man, unfortunately, time is killing us. I think Nolo and I had a great conversation. We had so much fun. We haven't seen each other in so long. So we took advantage of this platform. So, okay, last question there from Mutlalipule. So how do I market a product to communities that do not have access to social media? Very practical question.
That is a practical question. Well, I always say there's really two things you can do. There are actually three things. One is by social media. Are you talking about Facebook, etc.? Because then there is a case for your statement. But typically, South Africa has one of the highest penetrations of WhatsApp. So there definitely will be that option. I think WhatsApp is an underutilized tool. So that's on the tech side. But if there's no tech whatsoever, there's no other way to sort out your marketing than to be in that community. Then you have to go. You have to physically be there. You got to show up with the product. And there's many distribution points in those. So we used to do a lot of work in rural Northwest, that strip between Zeerust and the border, Botswana. And there's villages around there all the way to Tukwing. And what we actually did is we had a product rollout there as well as actually a bar of soap to bath with. And so really what we did there is I physically drove and I went, and you'd be amazed how many little shops there are along the way. And there's taxi ranks as well with the associations, etc. So your marketing in that environment where there's no tech is you're going back to 1940s, where you have 100%. To physically show up like a salesman with a little briefcase. You got to drop it open and you got to do the hard work. That's the only way it's going to be sold. Now, there's huge benefits to that because once people do like and buy into you, the product is tied to a person, so they likely won't change it. But you must also be prepared to go multiple trips because you can't just show up in my hood without seeing you before and tell me you've got a solution to change my life and I'm just behind you. That's just not how it's going to work. So, but great question. I think, especially if you want to take stuff abroad, not necessarily abroad, but even across the continent, you have to show up in person. No one really knows you, and you got to do the hard yards.
Awesome. Nolo, man, thank you so much. We have to land this plane. What an incredible conversation. And I hope, more than anything, like really more than anything, people are able to just grab, from the very personal stories that you told us. You know what I'm saying? Because the theory, like, you give us such deep, dope, and innovative theory, and I think that's also incredibly useful as well. But it's the personal stuff that will spur someone on. People are unlikely to go on theory off the bat, you know what I mean? So I really appreciate that. And in true Tshimong tradition, we always get an alumni or someone that's currently in our programs to actually say a word or two to our guests before they leave. So Ncedisi, my brother, just chat to Nolo and deliver the vote of thanks, and then I will formally deliver one from my side as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Tammy. And before I deliver my vote of thanks, I'd just like to say a proper shout out to everyone.
Yeah, man.
I'd like to can you hear me?
You cut there, my boy, for about 3 seconds. Just maybe start over from shout out. Start over from the shout out.
Okay, no, I just wanted to say shout out to everyone at rest right now, just continuing from the conversation you guys were having. But I'd like to also say good afternoon to everyone. My name is Ncedisi, and as Tommy mentioned, I'm a Tshimong alumni. And on behalf of Tshimong Youth Libraries and everyone on this call right now here on Zoom and on Facebook, I'd like to extend a warm vote of thanks to our guest speaker, Nolo Mokoena. I think I speak for everyone on this call and say that your insights and your ideas on entrepreneurship have truly added value to how we see entrepreneurship and how we'll engage with it from this point forward. You spoke beautifully on the use of education and skills training as a tool to solving problems. You spoke about the whole value creation cycle and how we should look at that innovatively. And I found that to be really interesting. But I also appreciate the really personal and reflective conversation that you guys, especially around failure. And I think those truly resonate with me as a young entrepreneur, and will definitely move forward as I continue to engage in my journey. Finally, I was really intrigued by the final bit of conversation that you guys are having about matching reality and innovation and just moving away from businesses. Looking forward to doing a bit more research on that, to double tap on that principle and see how I can begin to apply that into my own entrepreneurial journey. Thank you so much. You've really inspired us with your great words and your insight. And you so much. Over back to you, Tammy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sipo. And again, shout out to all my people at Res still. But really appreciate that, man. Nolo, from our side, again, from the Tshimong team, thank you. I think I had so many more questions still, right? But it's all good. I think it's great to engage entrepreneurs who are in the space with skin in the game, who got wet throughout the process, who've seen failure and who've seen success, and thank you so much for your time. And I don't know if you want to say one or two words from your side, and then we're officially outie.
Yeah, man, I just want to say again, congratulations to you, Busi, the entire team. I think you guys haven't been doing the kind of work you're doing for 6 months or a year. You've shown up year after year and, reinvented, created, and impact has remained central. So again, congratulations to you guys and all the best for the future, to you and Tshimong and the rest of the team. And also to you, Jay. I think, again, always leading, always being in front of social change. And so I think you guys are leading in more than just 4R. I think this platform is incredible. And so really, congratulations to all the team. And again, thank you very much for having me.
Sweet. Thank you so much. To everyone at home, everyone in front of their laptops, on their phones, Tshimong alumni, people involved in the Tshimong ecosystem all together, all around. Thank you so much for tuning in. People that may have never heard of Tshimong before, but happen to bump into this conversation, shout out to you where you are. And as soon as you leave this call, just start, right? Let's land the plane. Thank you so much, everyone.